All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. If everybody's ready, if you would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you would join me in a moment of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here tonight to discuss the business of the township. We thank you for this gloriously beautiful day. We ask that you would return us home safely tonight and help us to be good stewards of the township and guide us throughout the decision-making process that we have to do, and let us be fair to everybody involved. We pray this in your Son's name. Amen. All right, has everybody had a chance to, well, I guess Jess is the only one missing tonight. Was that me? Oh, sorry, you touched yours. Approval of the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to review the agenda? Any questions, comments, concerns about the agenda? Moving F below G. We can do that. Do we need to make a motion to do that? Well, I'll make a motion to move F below G on the agenda.
Second.
All right, we have motion, we have support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, how about the minutes from the August 12th meeting? Any comments, questions, concerns with those? I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
A second.
We have a motion, we have support. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
All right, any brief public comment? That's not related to anything you guys are going to talk about. All right, the new business, we have the preliminary site plan, or the site condominium approval for Bella Woods. A lot of information here. We do not have to do a public comment for this. We've done that in the conditional rezone, but the condominium does not require it, correct? So it's basically a discussion amongst us and the developer. We've had this for a few days now to be able to review this. Do you guys have any questions, or do you want me to ask, or do we want to have the developer give us any of the details that may have changed since we've last seen this? Or do you guys have questions about this, what you see currently?
I think highlight changes since the last time we saw this would be important.
Would you guys mind doing that? Last time we saw there was only, I think, 58 lots. So that obviously lot size has grown and stuff, but if you could, I guess, give us a quick rundown of what's changed since we were last here.
If you're talking about the changes from the approval from the board, because nothing's really changed from them, but
Just
you
from
guys
what we
haven't
saw.
seen it,
Right.
right? So I think, and I have to go by some recollection, when you saw this the first time, it was 61 units, and
61. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah.
and it was with well and septic. There was sewer, I think, on 23 or 24 of the 61 lots. Initially, that's now, and I now go by recollection. I didn't go relook at that data, but I think I'm pretty close. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong on that. And after a variety of meetings with the township board, meetings with staff, meetings with Kevin, and a variety of others, we came to a plan that was different than that. One of the things we heard from the community at large was a concern with septic systems might affect the lakes, whether it's Sunfish Lake or
Silver.
Closest lake here, or anything else. I think the township had asked the engineer, which would be Kevin, if you were led on that, to kind of ascertain what is best. And I don't think it was conclusive one way or another. Correct me if I'm wrong on what's the best way to do it. But I think it was kind of, a universal assumption. If you can find a way to make sewer work, it's better in the long run, and I would concur with that. In the initial analysis, we didn't think it would work. With a reasonable amount of more grading, we found that we could. We had to do some grading that didn't like to do kind of grading into the trees, so there was a little bit of tree cover in that process. Although we've been working on a grading plan to minimize that. But we found we could grade past serve all this. If we did some grading, if we ignored the sewer down here, which is one place we were coming in, the deeper sewer that we can utilize here, get much deeper cut, fill some different things, and get it to come through and serve its gravity back to, I would say approximately this area right through here, 48, right branch south where the trail might come in. And then some of the rest of this will be serviced by still going into the sanitary sewer system, but with a lift system that's done in each house. I've done a number of those in the past. I've done them around lakes, in a variety of places. The engineering company that probably a new office familiar with them as well. And I think the system that we're going to utilize for that connects it right into the sanitary sewer. So it's still on the sanitary sewer system. So in the combination of doing some grading in a couple areas that allowed us to end going deeper here, we could get sewer farther, and then we could service the rest of it with a little bit more unique sanitary system. So that was one of the things that changed dramatically. Substantial amount of cost for that. So I think to some extent the trade-off was let's do a few more lots, though still keeping everything the minimum of 1 acre, that we could accomplish that. We also heard that there was a concern about having some trail connectivity. So we looked at it and said we would be happy to build the trail, and that's part of our conditional rezone, have some of these things embedded in that conditional rezone. The trail system going through and up and over to this area, which is right back in that direction, and then connecting into the park at a place I think still to be determined by the township exactly where that might come in. It's also been a little grading through the years with to do some retention work. We also do the trail this way to connect to the trail along Building Road. I believe those were the most notable changes. So one thing we discussed, I don't know if we provided to you as a planning commission, but we brought in pictures of other places where we tried to work with larger lots. One of those places was Squire's Corners, which is up in Squire's Corner. I don't know if any of you visited that or not, but that's a location where we have lots that are kind of similar to this. They're about 160 feet wide, some maybe slightly larger, but most of them about 160 feet wide, and it was pretty largely vegetated with tree area. So we found a way there to try and preserve as many trees as possible. That's our same goal here, is do as much tree preservation as we can. We find our customers want the larger lot, but they also want that. They want to be some distance from their neighbor. They want to control what they do have. But we did create some tree buffering, and we'll do more than what we said here. You saw the pictures here at the meeting when we met with you folks. But we generally would just pocket that house within the trees. So I think those are the things that were discussed that were problematic or questionable, and those are the things that we try to resolve. In front of a development form, what we always wanted, and we still maintain here, is that when we get up to this end, so to the northern end, we have pretty high density. I mean, you can see that with these lots. One of our lots would probably hold 5 lots, on the other side of the road. Ours are just that much bigger. But the farther back we get, the larger the lots are, the larger the space. So the farther we get back, actually the larger our lots get. We think that's trying to make sure development fits into the environment until we get to the very back piece here. These lots are as much as 6.7 acres, 6 acres, 5.3, 3.5, 3 acres. So larger lots towards the far south end, which we think then compares nicely to what is back in here as well. Don't know if this is discussed with you before, but likely the price ranges here are, my guess is, the lowest end would be $750, maybe the lowest end is even $850, probably up to $2 million. That's where I'm guessing it'll go to in that range. It might be slightly higher than that. that's probably as much I could happily answer questions, but kind of as much as I can tell you that I can recall. I wasn't expecting that question, but that's my recollection of where it moved from where it was to what was approved under conditional rezoning.
Thank you. Do you guys have any questions for him? Nothing?
I got a couple.
Go ahead.
Okay, go. I see that you've got the township paying for part of that trail to connect. Have they agreed to do that?
I believe so. We're paying for 100% of the trail.
Yeah, you got that, but that corner up
This piece right here, and
over
on the
there
town,
says Cannon Township's going to pay for it.
Camp Township.
My question really is, if you're going to connect to the trail, there's roughly 65 people in their homes. Why should the township be paying for an individual subdivision of 60 people to connect that trail?
It was part of your
Yeah, I think
concept tonight.
the board had asked for that because they wanted connectivity.
They asked, we weren't required to do the trail. There's nothing in your ordinance required.
Okay.
We volunteered to pay the vast majority.
And I
Okay,
think
the
I think as part of that, Terry, we had asked for that a little bit more too, to try and reduce the amount of trail traffic along
Belting
And
Road.
the other couple things I got is, the one thing Ed pointed out is the distance between access points on Building Road.
Yeah, that is actually,
You cannot meet that. And I don't see anything in this package where you've communicated to MDOT or anybody saying a cut is okay, or an access point is okay. And the same thing on the wetlands, there's some questions of detention of wetland. There's nothing in here, Eagle or anybody saying that's okay. So it almost seems like we're jumping the gun on some of this stuff.
no, this is the order in which it needs to go, is that we need to know that this is the plan so we can communicate with them. The MDOT, we've been to them preliminarily, they will not touch it again until it's approved by this board. That's just what they say. I mean, that's their rule. We can't go out and start engineering stuff if we don't know that it's ready to go forward. Now, approval will be contingent upon us getting MDOT approval.
The problem I have, we're supposed to make a recommendation, vote on this, but we don't have that information.
Well, you do.
We gotta
Well, let's
have the
let's.
information.
So maybe this would be a good time to hear your concerns, Kevin, about the delineation, about the wetland surveys and stuff, so we can get a little bit of clarity on that as well.
Sure. Just on those couple items, and I'm Kevin Gritters, by the way. I think I've met most of you with Brennan Newhoff. So we reviewed the plan, and just to speak to those two items, the wetlands first. One item that we look at all the time is an initial screening of a site for where there might be wetlands. And one obvious thing is if there's wet portions of the site, there's aerial photography that goes way back in history. We can look at that. There's also a wetlands map viewer online, an Eagle website that has wetland soils. And there's disclaimers on it that say it's not formal delineations, it's based on soil surveys and general information. So we use those things as screening tools. That was one item that we identified right off the bat, was there's that large area in the northwest corner, I'll call it, of this property that appears wet visually, shown that way on the maps, the plans here that we have in front of us, and on that wetlands map viewer. So one of my comments was, my experience has been that kind of area is wetlands. Eagle does not look favorably generally on doing work in wetlands, and it at a minimum requires a permit if it's a regulated wetland. So I had pointed that out here. The one item in particular about this site is that there's stormwater management proposed specifically in that area. And that's something that, again, my experience has been Eagle does not look favorably on at all, because it can significantly change the character and the the look and the feel of the wetlands if you're consistently putting a lot more water there than there was before. So that's why I had flagged that. I think it'll require, to some level, an Eagle opinion on if this type of activity is permitted there. I know Mick was saying right before the meeting that he got some initial feedback from a wetlands consultant, but the reason I brought it up was because in the event that Eagle would say that is regulated wetland, that would not likely, without significant permitting, it might not allow for that stormwater management to happen there, in which case that would have to go somewhere else, which can change the whole lot layout or part of the lot layout. So
I can respond to that. And Kevin mentioned, I talked to him just before the meeting started. We had already engaged Bar Engineering, Matt McGregor, who I think we discussed is the grandfather of doing these things throughout West Michigan and all of Michigan. He's been doing it for 30 years probably. And in fact, he called me tonight. They've done most of their work. We had a question and I asked them to relook at the site which was called, I think Area C, I think is what it was identified as, was whether or not that was a regulated wetlands. And he confirmed for me, it was supposed to have been done last Friday because I'll just bring it and answer those questions. The guy that's writing up the final report's on vacation this week, so and he works for Matt. Matt called me and said, it's not regulated. I can get you a letter if you want that for tonight. I said, no, this stuff I generally work with the engineers and satisfy them, not this board, because it's generally conditioned on us having those things. And so I'm not worried about it being regulated wetlands. If for some reason, should it be, then we will redesign our stormwater to put it in such a place that makes Eagle happy. So I'm not worried about that. And again, it can be conditioned upon that wetland work, and we'll make sure we do that and provide it to both Edmund and to Kevin.
Did you have any other comments?
Well, I have a long letter. I think you.
There's a lot.
chance
Anything else you want to touch on though that you want to highlight? Because I mean, yeah, there was a lot.
on wetlands or MDOT or
That let's go to the MDOT piece of it because
Okay.
I think that's a big concern as well.
Yep.
It's got to be 455 feet distance.
yeah, and that comes from your access management overlay district, which spans Belding Road. So the intent is to regulate how many access points there are onto Belding Road. So I think Ed's report had more of the detail in it than mine did. One thing that I had identified was that required spacing of about 455 feet between access points on a 55-mile-an-hour road. The site cannot meet that because it only has about 300 feet of frontage on Belding Road, and there are driveways for properties on both sides of it. Driveways are roads. So, as Ed identified in his report, and I can let him speak to that, there is a mechanism within the access management overlay district to make exceptions to that. Certainly not advocating for that, but that was something that I saw in that overlay district, and I think something that warrants some discussion here, and that MDOT will have to consider, frankly, on what they look at with the location of that proposed road connection to Belding Road. So one other aspect of that is the traffic study that was provided with the application, and there was one thing that I disagreed with slightly in the conclusions of that traffic study. One of the conclusions was, there's a long discussion about warrants and what aspects of the proposed development might make it so that a lane taper or a center turn lane is warranted. So there's all analysis in that traffic study. The conclusions of all of it is that nothing is needed at that entrance. I said there was one thing I disagreed with because there is one warrant that is met, a warrant that requires a turn lane, not a center, I'm sorry, not a turn lane, a taper. But the conclusion was the numbers that were used in the traffic study were conservative. It doesn't meet the warrant for the morning or the afternoon, the vice versa. And so therefore it's not, nothing is proposed or recommended there. My opinion would be if it meets a warrant for something, whether it's morning or afternoon and not the other one, it still meets the warrant. And if the premise is that the traffic numbers were based on a previous version of the plan, which had more lots, then my suggestion would be go through the effort, redo the traffic study with the current number of lots, and show them that it doesn't meet the warrants. So that's one other piece that MDOT will have to look at, is that traffic study and determine what is required or what geometric improvements or other sorts of improvements are needed related to this entrance. Now, from a township standpoint, as I'm looking at it, there's a proposed driveway for the park that's shown on the other side of the road, or on the other side of the room, which will include a center turn lane. There's work that's ongoing down at Pinehurst, which was the Villages of Silver Lake development, which will also require a center turn lane, along with tapers. I'm not saying this is the same thing as those because it's not, but there is other work ongoing and under permit now for those other locations. And so it may get to the point where MDOT says more is needed here because of the configuration of Building Road out there. There's a lot of access points, as we can see on the plan, and traffic goes fast. So we all know that. So I'm at risk of speculating a bit. I think those are things that, or I know those are things that MDOT will consider as part of this when it gets to their desk.
And we concur, it's up to MDOT. I mean, that's at the end of the day, it's their decision, and we have to do exactly what they say to do, whether we like it or not. And we know that.
So, Kevin, quick question on that then. I mean, understanding that traffic is a primary concern with this entrance, is there any influence we as the township can have with MDOT, or is it just kind of throw our hopes to the wind and they get to do what they're going to do, and there's not really much sway we can have here?
I think at the end of the day, I don't know if I would consider it sway. I think they would consider opinions from the local community about how an area functions. Whether that has any bearing on their analysis at the end of the day and their conclusions, I don't know.
But you won't have, because MDOT will not deal with it until you vote on it. I mean, we have asked them. The engineers here tonight who spoke to them multiple times, and that is their process. We can't, and I think you guys you can't supersede MDOT, and they they can't tell you what to do either, but it's their road and they will do their analysis. They're pretty good at it. I mean, that's what they do for a living. Kevin, you're not worried about MDOT not doing their job, I presume. Yeah, we find them to be pretty diligent and dictatorial. I mean, we have zero sway with them. Zero. I mean, you just submit your data and they go, no, here's what you're going to do. It doesn't matter what we think. It doesn't matter what my engineer thinks. It matters what MDOT thinks. And we recognize that. We're okay with that. That's just what we have to do. We may not like their results. We won't like everything they say. Just what we have to do.
So what you're saying, just to recap, is that so you have concerns. Those concerns may be addressed by the MDOT analysis that can only be done after a site approval from us.
That's correct. And we recognize we need their approval to keep moving forward. I mean, this is something that you do one step and then the next step. I'm not allowed to jump ahead to the step that you're saying would be nice to know what MDOT would do, because they've already given us their preliminary, going, yes, there's a way to do this. We will not tell you what we think is the way you're going to do it. Is that a fair representation, Jeff?
Yeah, I guess just to add to that, I mean, we did submit for a permit initially, I think after some of the preliminary conversations here, and we got some, I guess, guideline comments back. They were like, oh, don't forget this, don't forget that, we'll want, stormwater calculations on this and that. They said that the entrance generally appears acceptable, but we need to see the preliminary entitlements through the township before we're actually going to provide you a full review. And I've had two conversations with the individual's name is Kerwin Keene at MDOT. I've had two conversations, one around the time of the conditional rezone, and then one a few weeks or a month before our submittal here, just asking, is there more feedback that you could provide us ahead of these meetings? Will you entertain a review? And the answer was no. We want the preliminary entitlements, kind of that first step through the condo process, so that we know the township is okay with the project moving forward. They said, okay, yep, preliminarily, this is okay. Oftentimes we do get the conditional approval, condition the approval on MDOT approval, and I think that was written into the letters as well. And then once we have that, then we can really start to dive into our engineering, not only with MDOT, but the road commission on our internal streets, Kevin, on our stormwater and our private streets, and start to really dig into all of those details. So this is, as Mick said, kind of the first step in that process, and gives us really the assurance in hand to then, or for MDOT to feel comfortable moving forward with their review. And they don't want to review something that, if they went through all their time and effort of reviewing it, if, the project isn't going to happen. So they've taken the stance, and this isn't just in Cannon Township. This is in every municipality that we've worked with MDOT, is get your preliminaries and then do your construction design, and we'll review the permit.
Okay, Kevin, can you confirm that is the process? That is MDOT?
I don't go through that process myself often, but my understanding is yes, that's the process.
So maybe we need to address your other concerns first. Go ahead.
I do have a question though on the driveway, just real quick, looking at the plans. Can you help me? I mean, to Rita's point with the hill being to the west, coming down, and the concern with the line of sight there. I see that the road is or the driveway there is proposed to be at the very north portion of the property line. I see there's a detention pond, to the south that's intended there. But is there a reason? I mean, that couldn't be? I mean, even shifted 50 feet. 30 feet. Like why, what is the rationale for that being tucked on the far north property line there?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we've done topo survey of M44 there. We've looked at site distance, and there is a hill there. I acknowledge that. And really having the drive at the high point of our lot, which is that west end, is necessary for that sight distance to work. As we slide it to the east, it would be sliding downhill, and we'd be in jeopardy of losing that sight distance. And that was one of the preliminary things that MDOT kind of threw at us too, is saying, you're going to want to check your sight distance there. And so we did do a preliminary study on sight distance, and that was the location that worked.
I think the other challenging part about it being located there, though, is that if you look at it on the map, because it's on the very far west part of that top portion, it looks like from the maps that it would be almost directly next to the next driveway to the west. Is that correct? So it's not even really splitting the distance between the frontage. It's pushing it all the way to the one side and making it right next to the next driveway.
It's a matter of the geometry of the road that drives where you're located. That's the elevation of the road is not in the right spot. If MDOT suggests that we should move east, we'll move it east.
Well, we need to come to the conclusion of, are we okay with, I think we would have to make an exception to the rule, correct? To the ordinance? Yeah. So we would have to,
What's the exception? How much?
they have to meet, is it 455? Yeah. And they don't meet that right now. So we either have to be okay with that, and then we can look at the site plan as written, knowing that we're going to be okay with that, or we have to draw a line in the sand and say, this is not something that's negotiable.
And technically, we could say we're okay with it, and MDOT could come back and say we're not okay with it.
Correct.
And then they could ultimately change it.
Correct.
Okay.
That's a fair statement, right?
That's correct. I've got if you look at the second page of the memo that you got from Ed, it shows those standards in the ordinance that you can look at to waive the 455-foot requirement. And one of those standards, number 3, is that the modification has to be consistent with MDOT guidelines and supported by MDOT and or the County Road Commission. So ultimately, even if you grant the exception and MDOT comes back and says no, then that will preclude them from putting in the driveway.
So that's something we need to consider. That would be one item, but if you guys don't mind, I'd like to go back to the stormwater one. That one.
I just have one other comment on it, Jeff. It does seem like it's a chicken and egg thing, and I'd be concerned about getting a blessing of the plan if we're supposed to be considering. And the way I believe the ordinance piece of it is we're supposed to be considering their comments in determining whether or not we would grant an exception, except we don't have their comments because they won't give us their comments. So
Until we give them something.
yeah,
Right.
so if we find that all the criteria are met for an exception, I may want to frame it that we would only grant the exception pending information from MDOT, which was not available for our consideration or something. Because I really feel like I think the intent of the ordinance is that we would have that when we were considering the exception. But the practical difficulty is the developer can't provide it.
We turn your mic on. Jess just texted me saying, "Telling Lane."
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
That's true. I mean, what I'm trying to lead everybody to here is, like, with what Kevin said, we need stormwater can change the site plan layout here based off of the delineation report, correct? Or some of the building envelopes in some of these lots. We've already had one question highlighted in here about the we've got a walking path going through one of the detention basins. That's unless it's an elevated walking path, that's going to be an issue as well. Like, I'm leaning towards, like, we make a recommendation to table this to allow him to address a lot of these comments from the engineer, because the delineation report or the wetland overlay, clearing up a lot of that will help with the site plan, like hammering out, like, this is what it's going to look like. And then we can make a determination, like, okay, if the site plan is going to be this, we could also say, hey, give us the updated traffic study with the 68 lots versus the 61. And then we can say, okay, pending what MDOT says, are we okay with our site plan? Because right now I look at it as there's a lot of things that could change off of this based off of the reports that we get back. And we haven't even touched on Ed stuff. This is just the engineer stuff. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Can I respond to some of that just a second? One, we just received this information, not last week sometime, I think later last week, Wednesday. So we did immediately the next day, I think, wrote Edmund and tried to answer a few of these things as well. So I think all of those can be answered. Every question you bring up, we can answer.
But we don't have the report for the delineation, the wetland delineation.
Yeah.
How would we know?
Well, your question was, well, can they develop the lots this way? And your first one was, is it going to be an elevated walkway? Does it need to be the elevated walkway because the detention pond there is going through a flat spot? So on either side, you might be able to describe that. So everything that came in, again, it just came out for us last week, Thursday. So it doesn't give us much time, though we submitted our data, whatever. So,
But that's kind of highlighting the point of why I don't want to make a decision on this, because you haven't had time to.
well, we can answer everything.
But we don't have the wetland delineation report yet.
You don't have to have the wetland. It can be contingent upon that, or we can move that out of that wetland. It's not a problem.
But it's not just the elevated boardwalk. There's a number of lots that could change.
No, the lots would change at all. But I'll let the engineers speak to that.
So the boardwalk thing, that is that can be rerouted around the pond. We actually it's hard to see on my half scale. We had these two cells here for the detention pond. The intent is for that walk to follow the berm between them. So having a boardwalk through detention is not an issue, and that will be addressed with construction plans certainly.
Excuse me, Jeff. I just had a question about that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but in looking at the bike path is 8 feet wide, and it sounds like it's contemplated that would be centered on a 15-foot wide easement. I just had a question about, is that easement for the benefit of the public? So it's not just the users or the residents of the community?
Easement will be dedicated to the township.
To the township, but is that for maintenance or is that for the public's use to
It
come?
was discussed before. It was for definitely for public use and for maintenance.
Okay.
It becomes part of your trail system.
Okay, and so I apologize for the interruption. If the bike path were going to be relocated to what appears to be a berm area, and again, this is in contemplation of a 15-foot wide easement. That this bike path is in the middle of that easement. And then as I think about that, I'm wondering how that easement that potentially would affect your lots in terms of you can't build within the easement. And I wasn't sure, I'm not an expert at reading these, that the easement dimensions were clearly delineated on your site plan. And I recognize this as preliminary.
Yes, the easement allows for the trail, allows for maintenance of the trail. The homeowner would not be allowed to put a shed or other building in that easement. 15 feet is really it's pretty narrow. It's not burdensome to those lots. We have drainage easements that are 30 feet wide that are going to run through lots. So this is half of that. If we don't necessarily have it here, but if we have water main easements or sanitary sewer easements are 30, that's pretty commonplace in many developments. So the 15 is not going to overburden this property, particularly Unit 7, which is where it'll kind of cut through.
And that, I don't know if you can see this, but let me just bring it up to you so you can. So that easement, instead of right down the bottom line, and some of the stuff you're guessing some of this if you're running the stage stuff. Here's where the path goes. As we look at it, it's on a 3.85 acre lot. Instead of it going through here, or reroute this, when you're at the board level, the board kind of wanted to go this way anyway, because you've got medical area here. So we've had this conversation. We said finalize that nexus to here with your control.
that's kind of why I want to see the wetland delineation, because if you need to move those stormwater detention spots because the Eagle won't allow you to permit them for there, where are they going to go?
We can get them.
But that would change the site plan.
Yeah. I mean, we just put some.
But that's one of the criteria of the site plan. We have to see the stormwater detention.
I don't know. We know John's point, right? We probably should try to show us the largest possible detention.
So, yeah, so we, especially in the initial phase, we want to make sure that we're covered. I anticipate that some of these areas are going to shrink a little bit. These detention areas, I can't tell you how much, but that's also part of why a lot of times there's conditional approvals on things like MDOT and wetlands, and we've got to provide that information to Kevin, to Edmund. If at any point in the process before we get to our final approvals, Edmund says, well, there's a significant change, and Edmund, correct me if I'm wrong, this would likely get kicked back to this body if there were significant changes and lot layouts changed, and we moved roads and lot lines and detention pond locations. But that's part of the preliminary process.
This is not final. And when I can't get to a final, I can't get to a preliminary. So they also do is a chicken and egg thing. I gotta have a preliminarily. We're not asking you to do a final. We're asking you preliminarily. Here's where we're at. Yeah, the rest of the details that we come in for the final. I mean, that's a different level.
Can I ask a quick question over on this side?
Sure.
I'm new to the planning commission, so I apologize if this is a basic question, but do you use the Eagle overlay to look at the wetlands?
Oh, yeah.
So I know that you've been having conversations with the planning commission and the board for some time now. I'm just curious why a study hasn't already been done.
Well, as I said, I do. It's done. I just don't have the final report to hand to you. The drafter of the report, as I said earlier, Matt McGregor, who is the longest serving one, came from Eagle, and as the guy's been doing this longer than anybody, personally called me today and said, "Hey, I can get you a letter." Because I said, "Yeah, I can get you a letter." That because he said the guy drafting the final report is on vacation, so I could have come here with it. I don't even.
Do we require Eagle or do we require
Like,
a it doesn't matter, or?
No, we just, as long as we meet the ordinance requirements, that's great. But there's a lot of things that are missing that these guys have brought up, that there's a lot of variables. There's a lot of things that could change the site plan. I mean, we haven't gotten to Ed's stuff. Ed's got, do you want to list off some things that you're concerned with? Because I know we're missing.
Well, there are some areas related to the do not disturb in our approved site plan. It was noted within the plan. We discussed it that when we went to sewer, you were going to do some more grading. So there are some spots that we may violate that, but that was embedded right into that site plan that was approved. The language said precisely, let me just read that. No disturb area is not applied to areas required for utility, sewer installation, street design or grading, detention or retention areas, or areas of dead or diseased trees. I mean, that was always anticipated, that we knew that we couldn't tell exactly what the sewer, we definitely knew we were going to do grading. I mean, Kevin and I had that discussion. You had it with my engineer. If we do some grading, we can make this work for sewer. That took a higher priority. Said, okay, we will do that. Now we got to figure all that out. But that note was on the plan for that very reason. Yeah, and we're going to, and in the most updated plans, I mean, we got lots of detail there. We're showing exactly where we think we might affect that. And that'll come to you, it'll come to Kevin and others.
So Ed, how is that enforced? And the reason I ask that is because in the development next door, when we approved, this was some time ago, we approved Summer Meadows Court. And as part of that, as I recall, we had put language in there that no trees greater than 3-4 inches or whatever were to be removed as part of that. And you drive down there today, if you look at an aerial, I mean, even on theirs, and you drive down there today, you can see the full back of that house, and all of those trees have been cleared. And there was no retribution, ramifications for doing that. And so is this, yeah, because that was, I mean, those were contingencies that we put on approval of that addition, though, for the township. And so I guess it's just the question of how does that get regulated?
Ben, was your question there during construction or after construction and like general livability?
Based on, you know, pre and post pictures, it looks like it was part of construction of the development of the property.
Okay.
Not homeowner after the fact, but here so.
We have no problem managing it during construction, and we do. I mean, that's just what we do.
Does anybody have any questions on Ed's comments?
I have one additional question not related to Ed. Nobody has any for Ed.
Go ahead.
Goes back to Kevin's. Another note that he made as it relates to the stormwater management was the fact that there were 3 areas that directly drained off site and would impact other properties. He noted that there needed to be calculations to demonstrate that there's no increase in runoff rate or volume from those areas as a result of the development. Would that signify a possible major site change if it is determined from those calculations that there is too much runoff?
No, we just put more back into our storm system. I mean, that's the norm for that. To take to detention areas if they're direct runoff. You must be talking about, was that on Kevin's on stormwater management? Were you bringing that up, Kevin's?
Yeah, there were 3 areas that I saw, part of lots 10 through 14, 48 to 51, 60 to 63, and Jeff can probably speak to more detail on that, but it looks like, based on the topography, that those are areas that would not drain into the on-site stormwater management, but could have some developed surface like a roof or something else that could drain directly off-site. So generally the approach there is to say, well, if you're going to have an area that has changed that's going to drain directly off-site, you got to make sure that the larger area that used to drain off-site there is accounted for properly. So often it becomes a balance of what happens on site. So part of the site, so say it was 5 acres that used to flow directly off-site through the woods as it does today. If 4 of those acres are developed as part of the development and go into the on-site stormwater management, and now only 1 of those acres continues to drain off-site, the amount of flow off-site after the development, even if it has a roof on it, is going to be less than it was before. So that's the principle here, where there are some areas that look like they're going to drain off-site. Do the analysis, make sure that the amount in both flow rate and volume will be less. If they aren't less, then they would have to do something to manage that stormwater. There might be a swale in the backyard to try to collect it, or some other mechanism. There are ways around it. So, long story to get to your question, I would not anticipate a site layout change to address that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, his last sentence kind of says it. If this is the case, detailed calculations need to demonstrate no increase in runoff rate or volume from these areas as a result of the development. So we have to prove to Kevin that we've calculated that. That's what Jeff will do. it goes and starts looking at those, whatever, 4 or 5 lots that might have been, or more than that. But whatever those sectional lots, and we have to prove calculations that, as Kevin said, we've managed enough of it that the flow is no greater than it was before. That's true in every development that we deal with. So the big, there's nothing big in yours, Edmund, with
Well, the
Kevin.
road's kind of big. I mean,
Pardon me?
the road's kind of big.
No, I'm just saying in his report, I was asking, there was nothing in his report that was difficult to deal with on a preliminary basis. I think in Kevin's report, which would be the other one we're dealing with, would be primarily related to MDOT. And as we've discussed, and there's no way I can deal with MDOT until I get this approval process done. So I need the preliminary approval to move forward.
But I still think we need to address the water, the storm water. I mean, the multiple detention spots that could be in wetlands already that would require permits. Like, I have a hard time wanting to make a recommendation when there's so many different variables to this. When you keep saying you've got the information or you can answer all this, then why can't it be provided or put on the report?
Let me ask maybe the experts, whether it's Kevin or Edmund. I think my request is normal in that we're asking for the preliminary approval process, not the final approval process, to keep moving forward. And yes, we have to prove that data out to your team. That we understand that, no questions about that. And we're subjected to that, and that's not a problem. But it's a step process. We're only asking for the preliminary, not asking for your final approval. I would understand if you said, well, I need that final approval. Now, having just said that, MDOT, will they do it after the preliminary? Will they do it after the final? I think but MDOT portion might be final from you guys, subject to MDOT is my guess on that one. Not the stormwater stuff. We can solve that readily between now and the final, which is a month from now. When do we come back? So we can't get on the next one until December. So I mean that becomes this, that's why we get preliminary. Why I'm praying that will give us the preliminary. I think we have the data necessary for preliminary, not final. It'll be in roughly December when we're back here, or late November, with that information. Now, should we not have that information related to stormwater, etc., I understand your reticence. But at this point, I do. We need the fairness of being able to just move forward on a preliminary basis.
I'm going to chime in here real quick. Brad Fowler from Micah Myers. One of the things the Planning Commission should look at, because this will not come back to you for final, it will go to the board, are those 8 considerations on whether or not you want to waive the overlay district 455-foot requirement. One of those relates to MDOT. So what they're saying is obviously that one would have to be conditioned on what MDOT says, because MDOT has to be in favor of it, support it, and find that it's consistent with their guidelines. But there's 7 other requirements that the Planning Commission should look at and determine, because that's your determination to make, not the board's, and it won't be coming back to you. So
That's why I'm leaning towards I'd like to table this and get all this information. I've never seen a list of 8 that we give an approval with 8 conditions or even 7 conditions. To me, there's just too many variables here that I think could be answered, but we need them to be answered, so that way it doesn't change. Because like you said, we won't see a lot of this again.
I have a quick question. Is it a requirement to meet all 8 or a certain portion of the 8?
The ordinance says all 8 have to be met to waive that requirement in the overlay district.
And then is it our responsibility to read each of the 8 and determine amongst ourselves whether we believe they meet it or not? Or does the applicant have an opportunity to provide their own commentary as to why they believe they meet them?
they can provide that commentary. Ultimately, it's your decision as a body, as a planning commission, to make that determination, regardless if there's applicant comments or not.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the process is the same whether we table it and they make the changes and come back, or we give the conditional approval, they make the changes. The big difference to me is if I give conditional approval on nothing, there's no information there, I'm turning the planning commission role over to our
We're just kicking it down.
employees over there. And I'm not saying they won't do a good job because we always give conditions and stuff like that. But it seems to me that with the napkin and no information, we're turning our responsibility over to other people. And without the valid information to see it, to vote on it, the project could go down the drain on MDOT. It might not even happen. So I see, and I realize you're going to say, oh, time and time is money and all this other crap. And I agree with that. But I cannot vote favorably on a napkin that doesn't have anything. I could sketch up a bunch of stuff and let you come in real early and say, well, yeah, we'll take care of that, we'll take care of that, we'll take care of that. We're just giving up our responsibility to see what's out there as the plan, to vote yay or nay or whatever the case. So I'm for this because the procedure's the same, except for you got to come back to us after they've made the changes or the conditions, whatever you want to do. So I definitely am in favor of tabling this, get things right on a piece of paper that we can see, and then go forward.
I have a question. I'd like to answer that, but I have a question. You said there's 8 conditions. I have not seen the 8 conditions. Where would I see that?
So it's in Ed's memo, but it's in the order. He's quoting from the ordinance, so it's 450-21.04K,
Okay.
and these would be the conditions
Okay.
to waive.
On page 2. Okay.
Page 2 of Ed's
Yes.
memo, correct.
Yeah, 2 and 3.
And I believe, Ed, you quoted that right from the ordinance, correct?
Can I ask a question on that? Looking at item 3, and hearing that we would need to rationalize all 8 of them, that's certainly helpful to know. It says the proposed modification, access improvement of an existing property, new land that would generate less traffic than the previous land use, which I don't think is the case here, as we're adding houses and it's vacant property. But then it also says, or that the proposed modification, which is what I'm looking for, is consistent with MDOT guidelines and is supported by MDOT and or the County Road Commission. So how do we, understanding the predicament here that we're saying MDOT won't look at it till we approve it, we're saying in our ordinance, we need to understand MDOT's guidelines. So even if the township reaches out, if they can't support it per se, how do we get the appropriate guidelines to make sure that we're aligning with that, to even evaluate that? Or is that an issue with our ordinance?
They had to have their. So if the township reaches out, they won't even talk to the township. Kevin, you want to see if they'll respond to you? I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask, right?
I mean, does MDOT have guidelines that they publish that, it seems like that would be some sort of documentation that would be available somewhere, because if there are parcels out there that you couldn't meet the guidelines, they would make them very unfavorable to purchase. So it just seems like there might be some preliminary guidelines that MDOT would have somewhere to at least guide developers to understand, whether a particular parcel is feasible or not.
We did that, and that's what Jeff had mentioned. We have been to MDOT, and they've given their preliminary. Everything looks like it'll work. You get nothing more from us in the detail side until we've gone through this process. So they've given us that.
And you have documentation?
Pardon me?
Documentation from them that they said everything looks okay? I mean, that would have been
What do you
nice to have in the packet.
Yeah, we have an email from them with kind of the preliminary notes.
But
And that's based on the traffic study that is from the first.
61.
They haven't seen the traffic study because it would be part of their permit review, which they.
So they haven't seen the what is their approval based on then, or their preliminary correspondence with you? What is that
It
based
was-
on?
It was more or less an email that said, generally the configuration looks acceptable. For permitting, you're going to need, and there was a list of 4 or 5 things in there, including their own they have their own stormwater calculation process that we're required to go through.
you submitted documentation to them for them to be able to do the preliminary review.
Yeah, they saw a concept driveway plan. Sure.
It's just concerning to me because they came back and said it's okay. Do they not look at the access management overlay? Because that's
you guys. That's not them. They don't care what you have different ordinances. I mean, they're telling you across the state and every township. So every 6 miles, there's a cycling township. Every 6 miles, somebody like this township, or the next township, or the next township, can lay something on top of it. They're never going to look at that. They go, we're the federal government, we're the state government, and you guys can say some of these things that we may or may not. And you're right, that's our road. And they kind of trump, that's their approach. They're not going to look at your ordinance. They're going to look at how they manage roads across the entirety of the state of Michigan. There's 1,400 units of government in the state of Michigan. One of 2 states. It's called home rule in Wisconsin and Michigan. We're the only ones government like that in all 50 states. So you have 1,400 units of government. They just can't deal with 1,400 of them. So I'm going to look at all 1,400 regulations to make sure our roads can comply with them. Because our roads, there are roads that don't comply with us. I think it's fair to you to state that.
well, I guess then from my perspective, I don't have any information in the packet that has your commentary as to why we as the planning commission should approve the exception to the rule.
I never saw that until last week Wednesday. I didn't even know that existed.
So,
Okay, so that
again,
feels like
would you be
another.
open to us tabling this and you gather this information?
I would like you to vote on that because it's not. I can't tell you how to vote on that. I think your counsel can tell you, or Edmund can tell you what you generally might do there. I don't know how I should or can tell you that. I think it's up to you.
So the challenge that we have is, in order to modify the standard, we have to come to a conclusion that what you're proposing is consistent with the MDOT guidelines, and we just don't have that in front of us. But we suspect that based upon Jeff's communications with MDOT, they've told you what to do. You will be responding and doing things that you would be able to supply something to us and our engineer that would give us the confidence that you can meet this requirement.
I can't do that now. They won't even do their work until I'm through with this. You can condition your approval of that upon acceptable or a final MDOT approval, but that's the only way you can do it.
I was just suspecting. I was just suspecting you or your engineer can say, this is what we are proposing to do with this, and what we are proposing will meet the MDOT guidelines because you've been given those guidelines.
No, well, Jeff, you probably better answer that better than me. We can give them preliminary work, and they'll only go so far. It's a little bit like we give work to Kevin, and then Kevin will come up with here's a list of things that I see it differently than you guys. Mr. Engineer, Mr. Excel Engineering Company, I want you to do this and this and this. We don't tell him what to do. We give him our best ideas. He tells us what to do. Fairest description, Kevin? That's how
Let me interject here. So you say MDOT will look at preliminary things. Will they look at does the access drive meet their guidelines? That's just a simple question. Can you just say, does the access drive meet the guidelines? The ordinance requires the planning commission to have something from you that says that.
Well, we can provide an email, which will give them that's the best one we're going to have. We can provide that.
So if you had your engineer just provide a report that what you're planning will meet the guidelines as best as you understand it.
We can see, he's the engineer, so I'm going to ask Jeff. Could we write a letter? And let me just try to recreate what you said. I could ask my engineer to write a letter that says we will have a plan that meets the guidelines as required by MDOT. That we can say, we don't really have any choice. That's what we have to do. I mean, that letter he can write, or he's right here. He can tell you that yes, because that's what they have to do.
Well, and also that's only one of the 8. So I guess my perspective is giving you as the applicant the opportunity to respond to each of the 8. But if you didn't want to do that and provide that color to us, I guess we could possibly make our own interpretation of it. But on top of that, there are at least 4 other items that Kevin laid out that could potentially create a major change in the layout. And so from my perspective, I am leaning with Jeff to table it until we have more of this information, because I don't want to tie my name to a conditional approval where I don't have the information. I mean, you said that you would have it soon. Why can't I would prefer to see it before saying I conditionally approve this particular preliminary plan, even if it is preliminary.
Okay. I don't like it. I think what you're asking is unfair. I'm just giving you my feeling, and you're giving.
We have an incomplete application then.
Yeah, I understand that. So, but let me then just try and get to. I want to make sure I do know what you want, and that what we would agree is going to be complete. To make sure I fully understand the sticking points, I can provide for you, and I think this will solve the stormwater. Our wetland consultants, Bar Engineering's report related to the wetlands. I can provide that. I can have that next week, so I can provide that information. Provide it to Kevin. Jeff will have it as well. And once we have that, I think that would resolve those issues. With that in hand, I think that would solve that problem. I think we can then tell you where stormwater can go, where we think the stormwater is going. I'm going to ask you this, Jeff. Would we be able to know in the next, let's say, week, how much that's going to change our stormwater? How much is it, it's getting smaller? Is it still too early to go, well, we can show it differently, or should we just keep it the larger sizes that we think they are now and shrink it later when we get the final calculations? What are you most comfortable with?
Yeah, I mean, we've got preliminary calculations that show our stormwater areas are a little bit larger than they need to be, and so we'll shrink those during our construction plan process. Any of the wetland stuff, which it sounds like that's maybe not regulated wetland in that area, it won't impact our detention. So from a stormwater standpoint, I think we're in good shape. The MDOT stuff. I mean, we can provide that email where they said, generally acceptable.
So one, I will come back and I will have it hopefully by next week. The report related to wetlands. So I have that from the consulting engineer. 2, I think the other question was really just, what I'm incomplete on is MDOT. I can provide to you the email that says preliminarily, yes, but it'd be no deeper than that. So that would solve the MDOT. You would likely still want to condition your approval on a final MDOT approval. I mean, the entirety of the project's conditioned upon that. I think those are the two issues. Is there another issue that you think I'm incomplete on other than those two
I
issues?
think the other issue was the 8 standards for whether or not the planning commission would waive the 455 foot distance requirement for the access drive, and your position on how each of those standards are met. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that was one of the things you.
Yeah, obviously, it'd be my opinion, and it's likely that I'm going to say yes. That would be fair for you. I'm going to find a way to do that. It's ultimately your decision on it. Yeah.
All we're asking is we're trying to give you the option to answer some of the things that we're required to answer for. Because, like I said, we have an incomplete application because we haven't met some of the standards here. I know that you've been working hard on this. I know that you can answer these and get these things done. And then we don't have to worry about anything not change or anything changing from our level. It's once we have all this information and we've met all the requirements and we make a recommendation, great. There shouldn't be anything in question.
Okay. So my third item is answering 1 to 8 that addresses those where we say here we affirm that because of this, because of this on each
I think the
one of
best
the
thing
items.
that I think if we're going to make a motion to table this, we would, if it's approved, we would give him basically Ed's list. Would you guys agree? Yeah. Because that spells out exactly what he's trying to make notes for right now. Correct? Would you guys agree to?
What is Ed's? What do you said?
On
Ed's
the
list.
planner's
This-
memo.
The last page of the planner's
Yep.
memo.
The 8 to-dos address everything that we've had questions about, and it would also give him great direction on what we want to see in order to make a recommendation for this.
So those 8 things plus
The 8
the 8
from the
stand plus
ordinance,
the 8
yes.
standards. Okay, the wetlands
Which
delineation.
obviously I think number 5 on Ed's list would be omitted, correct, Ed? Because he can't do that until he has something from us. Right. Right.
Which was number 5? I'm just trying to track.
Number 5, it says all MDOT permits must be obtained. We
The last
can't
page
ask
of the
you to give us
planner's
any
memo.
information on that until you
My number 5, see, if I'm back to this 455 feet.
No.
No.
The
You're-
last page of the planner's
Sorry.
memo.
Okay.
Do you
Oh,
have any
yeah.
way of putting it up on the screen for him to see it? The memo?
So I just want to make sure I'm totally on track with you
Anybody have it
guys.
printed? Terry, do you have it printed off? Or somebody that we could just show him what it says so he can see it?
Well, I'm reading it right here.
You got it?
Yeah. If you're talking about the only thing we're talking about then, are you saying are these last things here on Ed's memo?
Those spell out all the things that we would like to see. Would you guys agree?
It doesn't include the
Doesn't include-
rationalization for the board.
Correct. You would need the 8 questions answered for the rationalization of the ordinance.
Okay, let me just go through those. The number 1, it says the bylaws and master deed must be corrected prior to submitting for the final approval.
Yep.
But that by its definition, I do that before the final approval, not preliminary. So I don't need to deal with that one.
It's just something that we're going to recommend for an approval.
Yes, but you're not looking for me to come back with
Correct.
additional.
You don't have to.
I just
that
I just don't want to come back
That's
again and feel like
Nope, we're basically looking for the things that are
let you
missing
guys
from the site plan.
measurements. We've discussed the measurements for the do not disturb with Edmund. Maybe we could
put
go
them
through
on.
some of this with Edmund, and then he might redraft some of this as well.
Just, yeah. It's all there.
Yes.
there's no-
There are some places where we won't have those, that's generally on there now, but yes, that's already on the plan. It has been on the plan since it was approved by the board. But I'll talk with you maybe to make sure I'm identifying that just the way you want it without trying to confuse either you people or me right now. We will have a wetlands delineation. Eagle won't deal with it at this point in time. We're not looking for MDOT anything more on MDOT, we fully discussed that.
But the email or whatever.
We'll provide
Yes.
the proof of
Blaine had
what they've
mentioned,
said
yes.
to this point.
Yeah.
It's not great detail. You're not going to see some giant report. Just want to make that crystal clear. to you
That's
guys.
fine.
And we recognize the next one, any and all equal permits must be obtained. We recognize that it's not new data I need to bring to you. We recognize that we have to address all engineers' comments. I don't think, was there anything on your comments then, Kevin, that other than what we've already talked about that I would need to come back with?
There was one other thing I had that we haven't touched on yet, and that's the item number 1. Under stormwater management, where the plans show 4 stormwater management basins.
Actually, I think there's 5.
5.
Yeah, there's 5
Yeah, 2 of them function as one.
as one. Okay.
So yeah, the 2 in the maybe not wetland area that we're
We don't know
talking. We don't know yet. The 2 there in that northwest corner will act as one, as I see it. So they're joined, or there's a
Yes.
firm barrier
Yes.
between them, but I think
It's one.
the intent is to have a connecting pipe
Yes.
so they rise and fall together. So if we consider those as 4 areas, the general practice is for a development site to have 1 stormwater management basin. This one has 4. So there can be exceptions to the 1 rule of thumb if the site topography, if it's a big site, some of the area flows this way, some of it flows that way, some of it flows that way, and it's just not practical at all to collect that water and put it in a single basin. So there can be exceptions to the 1 basin rule of thumb. Here, it seems like there maybe could be 3 areas instead of 4, and it was the small basin on 14, 15, 16, and 17 that I thought maybe could get consolidated into one of the others. So that was an observation that I had, that in the spirit of the or the intent of the stormwater management guidelines to minimize the number of basins.
When we
To
mass
combine 'em.
grade, and I think you would well know this, if I'm mass grading a site, we always go to 1 detention, just what
Yep.
you do. It's more economical for us to go to 1. This site, probably weren't in all the other meetings, but I think there's 3 points. 1 was traffic, 1 was sewer. 3rd point would be, what can we do for tree preservation? And we're all about that too. My instructions to Jeff was do whatever you can so we're not mass grading. So I think that drove part of that. If we could, again, just work with you as the engineer, and if we could consolidate, we will. But I don't want to do so at the expense of mass grading anything. That was critical for me from the beginning. I've walked this site 15 times, and it's a beautiful place with trees, and that's why my first plan was exactly the way it was, which I felt that was a little bit more respectful of the site. But sewer was important, so when we did that, we had to compromise on a few things. I don't want to compromise more and do more mass grading. So if we could just be allowed to solve that with him in a way that you're comfortable, I'm no problem with that.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not suggesting mass grading. Where that was coming from is the bottom of the basin on 14 through 17 is, at least according to the preliminary grading, is at about 870. The bottom of the basins to the north is 853, so about 17 feet lower. So with some storm sewer piping in the roads, it could possibly connect. So that was the origin of that comment.
Then we'd have to make them bigger on 8, 9, and 10. Just trying to avoid that too. We just have really good soils here too. I mean, that was the other thing. Great site for getting as much infiltration as we can as well. I think but we're happy to work that out with you.
One other item that's in my resolution that I drafted is the Township Planning Commission can require street lighting. I didn't see any street lights on the site plan.
We would probably look to street. I read the report from Edmund. We can ask for a special assessment district, and since they're public roads, it's probably the direction we would go.
Yeah, I mean, the ordinance, I think, says you have to, if the streetlights will be required, that they would have to consent as the developer to a special assessment district being created to pay for all electricity costs. So,
I think we should have streetlights, and I have no problem with doing that. We do that regularly. So again, I'm recapping. I'm not dealing with bylaws. I'm going to discuss with Edmund Moore related to those do not disturb to make sure he's comfortable with that we're meeting that. We,
But can you put it on the preliminary site plan?
after we discuss it with him, so he can see the disturbed areas and see why we're putting it or not putting it, that he's comfortable why we put it there. And we will provide the delineation, and we will provide you the information from MDOT. So back to the two biggest things are a few minor corrections here, letter from MDOT, and the delineation.
So I just wouldn't want any misunderstanding if this is tabled and you're coming back to us. So not on Edmund's list of 8 things is this part of his report that says we, the planning commission, have to find that you met these.
Oh, the 8,
things.
yes.
So you should be sure.
Answers to items 1 through 8 related to the 455 feet.
Yes, and one of those is the MDOT thing, and that actually has 2 components to it. One is that you meet the guidelines and that the MDOT supports it, and maybe you can get that combination with a communication from your engineer and this MDOT email, but it's hard to say, yeah, give us the email and we're good with it, because we don't have that in front of us.
I think what I will also do, Edmund, I'm going to try and get a note to you, an email maybe tomorrow, and just I'll confirm these things just so that we're both clear, and we'll if you think I'm not clear, you can correct me. And then I guess my last request would be, can we get on before a December timeline? Is there any meeting we can be into in November? Second Tuesday in November.
So
Okay.
are you guys comfortable? I mean, I guess we still have to make a motion to, or did you have any other questions about why?
No, I just want to make sure I'm coming. I just don't want, I feel like I've disappointed you guys with no intention of doing that. I just want to make sure I'm absolutely clear so I don't come back again and go, well, you just didn't hear me right. So I want to make sure I've got that.
Do you guys have any other comments for him? Does somebody want to make a motion to table? Do we need to list all the conditions of why we're tabling?
no, you don't need to list the conditions while you're tabling. I think you would just say tabling for the reasons provided. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to table the preliminary site plan for the motions that we've discussed.
Support.
We have a motion, we have support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Look
Thank you.
forward to seeing you and getting this done for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'll get back to my agenda here. The next item. I got it. Pending business. I know. We switched it around. We went to F. So the ordinance review, we gave some feedback. We gave some feedback to the attorney on section 3, and I understand you don't have anything for us yet, but you could possibly have something next month.
Yeah, I just got it today, so I will take that feedback and turn it around and turn it into an ordinance draft.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I guess moving forward, I don't want to overload you with a bunch of stuff. Do you want to do chapter by chapter, or would you prefer we give you a couple of chapters to look at and you tell us when you're done with it?
It's up to you. I mean, I'd prefer we go chapter by chapter, so it's not an overload and it gives us more kind of time to focus in on the chapters in our meetings here when we discuss. But I'm open to whatever you guys would like to do.
Okay. So are you guys okay with doing, reviewing what he has for us for section 3 next meeting, and we study up on section 4 to give him any concerns that we may have with it? Does that work for you, Ed? Cool. Other than that, is there any comments from any of you guys? Anything from you, Ed? So we will have something for November. So unless he doesn't get that back to you by a certain date, I would assume, right? I'll let you make that phone call.
Can we move the date of it?
It would have to be public notice, like right now, wouldn't it? So technically we wouldn't need to, but the office is still going to be closed.
Yeah, you just, well, it's not there's no public hearing, but you still, I think, need to have, if it's not going to be a regular meeting, 18 hours notice of posting. So, yeah.
The 12th? We could do it then, possibly.
I'll be out. Gene,
There's a good chance I might be with Peter, so it's one of those things. I might be in Canada, so Edmonton, where it's going to be -40. So, other than that, when do we need to public notice that by then? You said 18 hours? Okay.
18 hours prior. Needs
So
to
we've
be
got
posted.
some time to figure that date out, and you can send an email and we can review with everybody.
Do we know the date on that yet? I just want to check my calendar.
10th or the 12th?
So if it's the 10th, I won't be able to be here, but I can have someone from our firm here if we need to.
We can try the 12th. Be like 4.
No, we can't because you can't vote. You can watch from India, but you can't vote if you're calling in from India.
So the 10th there's a board meeting? Yeah. So it'd be the 12th then. All right. Anybody else have any comments? We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.